Hello and welcome to the Everyday Adventure Podcast. My name is Nikki Bass and I will be bringing you thoughts, ideas and stories from some incredible guests to hopefully inspire you to live more adventurously in your everyday lives. Hello and welcome to season 3 of the Everyday Adventure Podcast. I'm so delighted to have you join me back here again. I can't believe it's almost a year since I pressed go on that very first introductory episode. I can still remember the slightly sick feeling in my stomach as I did that, which, as I often say, is always a sign of a great adventure to come. And in this episode, we are kicking it off in absolute style with one of my all-time heroes, the snowboarding legend, Lesley McKenna. Lesley is a 3-time Olympian. She's a coach and instructor. And when I first started snowboarding back in the 90s, she was one of the very few female professional snowboarders out there. And needless to say, she was a total inspiration to me as I took those very first tenuous turns on the slope. But it's been over the last year, really, in lockdown, that I started following Lesley on Instagram. And she's been inspiring me in a slightly different way with her amazing splitboarding adventures in her back garden of the Cairngorms in Scotland. And her feed has just been filled with the most beautiful photos of her touring out into the mountains and just the peace, the solitude, the beauty. And I have to say, snowboarding in the Cairngorms is not something that ever really occurred to me. But as a result of following Lesley's feed, I'm absolutely desperate to get my board out and get up there now. So it was with this in mind that I really wanted to speak to Lesley for this podcast. And I am so delighted that she agreed to come on the show. So Lesley, welcome to the show. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here and to be opening season 3 as well.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. It really is. And thanks for the lovely introduction as well.
Brilliant. But I suppose my first question for you really is, I mean, I know it's sort of casting your mind back probably quite a while ago, as it is for me, but what was it that first attracted you to snowboarding? How did you first get into it? Because I know you skied prior to that.
I mean, that's quite a good question. I still ski, so I'm going to put my cards on the table and say I did. I was, hugely lucky to have grown up in Aviemore and to have parents and grandparents and cousins and uncles and aunts who all skied and actually worked in the ski industry, either as instructors or ski patrollers or actually my dad was a piste machine driver. So I was kind of immersed in ski area and snow sports culture from, before I can even remember. I think I had skis on in my front garden when I was a toddler. So snowboarding was just another thing to do on the mountain. And when it came along, I was part of Cairngorm Ski Club, it's just a local ski club. And I think the first time we ever tried snowboarding, Tony Brown, who set up the first snowboard shop in Aviemore, had a bunch of snowboards for hire, and we managed to persuade him to lend us one as 12-year-olds, and a few people from the ski club went and had a shot on it and shared it as we came down the mountain in our ski boots and swapping over. Yeah, that was I guess
awesome,
1987 or something like that. It wasn't until the mid-90s that I got really into snowboarding, and I was a bit older. I was really old to actually start snowboarding as a career. I was in my late teens, but I just had fun with my friends at home on a snowboard. I was hanging out with the snowboarders more. They were a big part of the local scene. There were a lot of snowboarders in Aviemore at that time. You're looking like 94, 95, 96. 96 was a bumper season. And then in 96, I was actually on the British Alpine ski team at the time. And one of my fellow teammates, she actually got killed in a downhill skiing accident. So hugely tragic, really traumatic for everyone involved. And I'd come home for her funeral. It was like the end of January kind of time, and spent a few weeks at home whilst, everyone recovered from the aftermath. Or processed, so that you recover from that, the situation. And I just went snowboarding at that time. And I was lucky that I think there were a bunch of Basie courses on, and I knew some of the Basie snowboard trainers. Big shout out to Becky Malthouse here, and then the Boardwise crew. I think they lent me a snowboard, or I borrowed one. I can't remember how I even got a snowboard, and took me snowboarding. I think they must have, probably felt sorry for me, and thought that I might need some fun. And for whatever their motivations were, they helped me to learn to snowboard, and I became, I just fell in love with it. I became so obsessed with going snowboarding that when I went back out to finish my season on the Alpine Europa Cup tour, I'd taken my snowboard that I'd got given, maybe I bought it, I can't remember, with me. And after gate training in the morning, I'd go on my own snowboarding on the soft boot snowboard setup, and just kind of taught myself how to do it, which I laugh at now. I think that's hilarious. And then by the end of that season, a bit of serendipity happened at the British Alpine Ski Championship. Somebody crashed into me in the finish of the dual slalom. They had this dual slalom race on, and the result of that was I couldn't put my ski boots on anymore because they'd crashed into my shins, and the shins all swelled up. But I could put my soft snowboard boots on. And it just so happened that the British snowboarding champs were on just round the corner. So I hitched a lift round the corner to Marybelle and never looked back. That's how I got into snowboarding.
Wow. I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? Something that for somebody, in terms of an injury would be really shattering, actually enabled you to then go on and do, what you love doing. I love the fact that you, I mean, how did you have the energy to go from jumping from the skiing straight into the snowboarding as well? That's amazing. But I guess, so you went on to have this really successful career. You competed at the Olympics. I mean, just amazing. And then sort of moved into, I guess, the more sort of the coaching, instructing side of it. I guess at what point have you always sort of enjoyed doing the backcountry side of snowboarding as well? And so for those of you who don't snowboard, that sort of, getting away from the pistes and the lifts and trekking out off piste. Has that always been part of it for you too? Or is that something that you moved more into as I suppose, the competitive side of things eased off?
I've reflected on this a lot, and, having set up wandering workshops this year to put on Splitboard workshops, which unfortunately couldn't run due to COVID. But a big, huge driver for me, a huge passion for me, is the experience of being in the mountains, of being in the backcountry, of engaging with the environment, of making sense of the environment and my relationship with it and to it, both internally and externally. And my first memories of being up the mountain, and you're going back to when I'm, 5, 6, 7 years old, are of snow plowing on the snow, and the snow creating patterns that looked like the feathers in the angel wings. It must have been Christmas time, and we must have been making Christmas angels for the tree. I was fascinated by these patterns that I could make in the snow by sliding my skis sideways across. It must have been good snow, must have been powdery for Scotland, by sliding my skis across the snow. And then later on, as a 9, 10-year-old, my first backcountry experience was with my dad, and he'd let me skive off school this one day, which was a really rare occurrence. In fact, I think it's the only time I can remember. I don't know where my mum was, on some training day or something. Not sure she'd endorsed the skive. And my dad took me skiing, and we went into the backcountry, or the side, I'm going to call it side country. Corrie Louis Moor on Cairngorm is the furthest Looker's left bowl, but outside of the ski resort. And he took me there, and we skied on angel dust. That's all I can describe it as, or fairy dust. It was powder snow that had basically faceted crystals on top of it, and the sun was hitting these crystals, and it looked like it was had been sprayed with fairy glitter everywhere. Goodness. And it was really cold, so the crystals were hanging in the air and kind of glitter ghosts. And to this day, that just, that memory blew me away. That was magical for me. And to be skiing in that environment, in the mountains, in this like otherworldly space was something that I obviously really took to heart because, I still feel like that to this day, on that kind of day when it's cold and crisp and there's snow crystals in the air and they're glittering. I do feel like it's almost like a magical world. So I think my draw towards the backcountry was there from a really young age.
It's incredible when you talk about it as well, because it's, you can picture it so clearly. It's almost like that memory so recent for you as well, just in the way you describe it. It's amazing. And I suppose just sort of leading on from that is there are so many benefits. And I know that, all the guests that I have, when they come on the podcast and we talk about the outdoors, that there's so many potential benefits of getting out there. But I suppose particularly for you, what are the benefits you've really experienced from being there?
I think the benefits are many. So not only are there the physical benefits, the mental health benefits of just having your own space, of doing something for yourself with people who share a passion, the benefits in terms of how backcountry experiences can help you understand yourself and how you work and how you learn are fascinating and very powerful as well. And then to reflect, I spent a lot of time reflecting on this from the coaching perspective, how do you, what is knowledge, what is experience, what is expertise, how do they interact together, how do you create those, how do you help others create those, create that kind of development within themselves. And I think you need a rich and ever-changing environment to be able to do that. And that's exactly what you get in the backcountry. And, obviously a little bit of risk and complex decision making. I think that's important for self-actualization, and to do it in such a natural and wholesome environment. I'm sure you can get risk and complex decision making in many other ways. Forms of self-actualization, I'm sure, can happen in environments like banking, but to be able to have that in a natural environment that's connected to the natural world, I think really brings home that humans are part of that natural world, and you're part of the processes. You're affected as I'm just going to say mammal by the weather systems, by the natural systems, and your capacity to learn and to know, both again internal and external, can be developed through your experiences in the backcountry.
No, I mean, yeah, there's so much in what you've said that, I completely agree with. And I know, a lot of what I talk about is in terms of how, that point you make about risk, actually, how when we take ourselves out of our comfort zones, even if it's, just a little bit, rather than completely terrifying ourselves necessarily, but just to that point where we're not sure whether we can manage something, actually like you said, teaches you so much about what you're capable of, and enables you to cope with that uncertainty as well, which I think is such a big part of life, but the bit that we try and control all the time. So, I mean, I think, what you said there just sort of resonates so much. And I guess probably in a way is going to answer my next question, which is around, because you mentioned your wandering workshops that you set up recently, and really the inspiration behind that, and, where the idea came from. And I guess who are you looking to encourage into that sort of splitboarding environment?
So the wandering workshops kind of have been in the wings for, I'd say, a good few years. And really they were born out of discussions, often splitboarding or trail running or mountain biking or hiking, with like-minded friends about the culture of action sports, snowboarding certainly, but action sports in general, about the climate emergency, about responsibility to nature and to the environment if you are a participant or a passionate user of outdoor spaces, about supporting others. And then on the other hand, so from that, I guess, socio-political space into more of a creativity and innovation, people development, health and well-being kind of space, in terms of mindfulness and creativity, the interplay between mindfulness, creativity, and adventure, the way that the natural environment can support those creative processes, and how creative processes and capacities also inform those more political and I'm going to say social responsibility, social and environmental responsibility aspects in your life. So it's a real hybrid. And I think what we were, so I set up wandering workshops with Hannah Bailey, who is Neon Stash and is a photographer and journalist. And when we were discussing how we interpreted our backcountry experiences, I'd often use a lens of coaching or learning, and sometimes yoga and mindfulness, because that's my background, that's my expertise. And she'd use a lens of storytelling and photography, but very often we'd end up in the same place. And we found that really interesting. And it's an area, I think, that if you look in action sports, it's very often there, but very rarely presented together. And to take it away from the dominant narrative of, conquering steep, narrow lines or first ascents, or out of the space of struggle and conquering, and more into the space of becoming and sharing was our intention. So basically anyone who's interested in backcountry experiences that can also provide a story and a context for better understanding of the connection they have both to themselves, to others, and the environment is who we're aiming to attract.
That's so fascinating. I love the point you make about the creativity there, and that sort of interconnection. I was just thinking back to actually, for me, what I really loved about snowboarding when I first started, and also coming from a skiing background, that was, and I'd been skiing for years, and I think I did a week on a snowboard as part of a university ski trip, and that was me absolutely hooked. And, I go back to skiing every now and then, but that pull towards snowboarding was to me as much about that ability to be creative and about to I think, the freedom, feeling part of the environment, but also interpreting, I guess, the mountains and the slopes in a way that felt really natural. But it's something, like you said, that isn't talked about very much, that actually it's about the action and the activity and the adrenaline and, seeing it in those terms. But actually, yeah, I really love that connection you made with that. And then, like you said as well, about that, that the environment is so very much part of it. So I'm really conscious that your plans were probably really affected by COVID and what's happened over the last year as well. I mean, what are your plans going forward? I mean, thinking of, I guess, hopefully the next winter season in, 21, 22 and there.
So, the idea with wandering workshops was always that it was a overarching umbrella that would fit any sort of workshop that promoted and supported the creative learning processes. So we are aiming to reach out to other partners and to create other wandering workshops. They can also wander. They don't have to happen in the Cairngorms. And they will remain with the same themes of creativity, mindfulness, personal exploration, inside and out, connection to self, others, and environment. But we will play with the access into those themes. So mountain biking yoga, trail running yoga, hiking yoga, those kind of ideas are in the wings. So watch this space. Hopefully Wandering Workshops summer editions will be out soon. And then for sure next winter we will launch the backcountry workshops again.
Awesome. It sounds so exciting. Yeah, I can't wait to see where it goes next as well. So the question I always ask my guests who come on the podcast, just to finish off, is there'll be people listening who either have, are really interested in taking up a new sport or going on an adventure of their own, or I think listening to your description of the wandering workshops and how you've set up and that idea and where it's come from, and that being an adventure in itself, starting something new in that space. And I guess if you had one piece of advice for someone wanting to start an adventure of their own, what would that be?
I've got just one piece of advice.
You can have more. Most people don't just give me one, to be fair. So you can have a few more if you like.
Talk about it to other people who might be passionate in the same area. So it's important to develop your ideas. You need a bit of feedback. You need to collaborate with others, whether or not you end up working with others on the project or not, that doesn't really matter. But to develop the idea, don't be scared to put it out there, because as soon as you've put it out there, you'll get interesting information back. And the more you talk about it, the more real it will become. So although it's scary to first put an idea out there, I think it's really important to do that.
That's amazing. And often the hardest part, I think, like you said, is actually taking it from being something within your head or a sort of something that's, I guess, burning away at the inside of you and going, all right, I'm going to make this. I think it's that thing of sometimes we feel we need to have it fully worked out or for it to be perfect and ready to go before we share it, rather than, like you said, actually part of the development process is that sharing with other people and collaborating and getting their thoughts and ideas too. Lesley, thank you so much. That's been absolutely amazing. If people want to find out more about you, more about the workshops, where can they go?
I think the best place to go currently would be Wandering Workshops website, so wanderingworkshops.com, Wandering WRK Shops on Instagram. So there's a bit of information on there, and through the Wandering Workshops projects, there's been a few little bits of media. I think White Lines wrote an article, and Board Source magazine also wrote an article. So have a wee look around and get in touch, get in touch through the Wandering Workshops website.
Brilliant. And I'll pop all those links in the show notes as well so that people can find them easily. Thank you so much again. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. And really looking forward to seeing where it all goes as well.
Well, thank you. And hopefully see you on the mountain at some point.
That would be incredible. Thanks so much again, Lesley. Take care. Bye.
Thanks.
So I really hope you enjoyed that conversation with Lesley as much as I did. What I wanted to pick up on this week was her point about the narrative, the dominant narrative that often comes around action sports, but a lot of sports, outdoor adventure sports, I think, which can be around conquering, around dominating the environment around you, about succeeding against the odds. And going higher, going steeper, achieving first, going bigger, going longer, whatever it is. And I know we've talked about it previously in previous seasons on the podcast, that because of that, actually the access to these adventures can feel really difficult. For those of us who might be starting a new sport or trying a new activity for the first time or wanting to take those very first steps, it can feel like what we're doing is not enough, that it's not challenging, that it's not really an adventure, even though it actually may very well be an adventure for us. And I guess what I'm thinking is how that narrative can be really excluding in some ways. And that I think what Lesley is doing, and so many of the guests I've spoken to are doing, about trying to change that narrative, about trying to make outdoor spaces, activities, action sports, whatever their area is, more inclusive, open for everybody to enjoy. And I think that ties really closely into Lesley's point as well about connecting with the environment is such a huge part of being in the outdoors. That's why so many of us are attracted or want to be out there in the first place. But that sometimes we can lose that connection when we're focusing on the activity itself. And I'm sure it's something that anyone who's ever experienced the mountains or, wonderful outdoor space is the first thing that hits you. I know for me, every time I travel to the Alps, the first thing that hits me is you come off the motorway and you start to see those peaks rise above you. And it's just sheer awe, just the scale, the beauty that, and when you're in those environments that it just, that's such a huge part of the experience. And that actually, if we can focus on that as being such an important part of the experience, maybe the other bits, that, not to say that there isn't a place for sort of challenging ourselves and pushing our own, knowledge of what we can do, but also that such a huge part of that experience is just about being, is just about connecting in whatever way that looks like for us. And I certainly know that was something huge for me that I adjusted to when I had children, when I started to not have that same independence of travel that I'd always been used to, or independence of being able to pick up and do the things and do them in whatever way I like. But adapting your perception of what that activity is about, that for me, popping down a blue run sometimes and just enjoying the little lips off the side, that is just as much fun as going bigger and steeper. So I'd love to know your thoughts. Please do, as always, get in touch, reach out to me. I'm on Instagram, Resilience at Work. You can find me on LinkedIn, Nikki Bass. You can visit my website, resiliencework.co.uk. And please feel free to drop me a message, leave me a review if you're enjoying this podcast. I'd love to know what you think. And otherwise, I will be back again next week with episode 2 of season 3 and another incredible guest to share with you. Hope you have a fantastic week and speak to you soon. Bye.